Living in Oakwood Estates seemed like a dream when I first moved in 3 years ago. Manicured lawns, pristine sidewalks, and a community pool that rivaled any resort, it was picture perfect. What the real estate agent conveniently glossed over was the iron-fisted rule of our homeowners association, specifically its president, Karen Wilkins. If you've ever wondered what happens when someone with the personality of a DMV employee wins a tiny amount of power, look no further than Karen. From the moment I moved in, Karen made it her personal mission to document my every supposed infraction. My garbage bins left out 12 minutes past the mandated removal time. That's a violation notice. The grass growing a quarter-inch above regulation height. Another notice. The American flag displayed outside my garage. According to Karen, it was improperly mounted and disrupting neighborhood aesthetic cohesion. I wish I was making this up. I'm generally a live and let live kind of guy. My job as a software developer means I spend most of my time working from home, minding my own business. I'd wave politely whenever I saw Karen power walking through the neighborhood with her clipboard, performing what she called her compliance inspections. But my attempts at neighborly courtesy were always met with narrowed eyes and scribbling notes. It became clear that, in Karen's world, compliance was the only currency that mattered. Things took a turn from annoying to concerning last summer when I decided to repaint my front door. I'd selected a deep navy blue that complemented the gray exterior of my home. I'd even submitted the proper paperwork to the HOA Architectural Committee and received approval. The painting crew arrived early on a Saturday morning, and by noon, the job was complete. I was admiring their work when the now familiar sound of Karen clearing her throat announced her presence. "That is not the approved color," she said with a clipped tone, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose as she examined a document in her HOA binder. The approved color was Midnight Ocean. "This is clearly Naval Academy blue." I took a deep breath and explained that the paint code matched exactly what had been approved. I even showed her the approval form and the paint can label. But Karen was unmoved. "The color appears different in execution than it did on the sample," she announced, lifting her chin with the confidence of someone who had just delivered an irrefutable legal argument. "You'll need to repaint it to the correct shade by Monday or face a daily fine of $100. At this point, my patience was wearing thin. I asked to see the bylaw that covered appearing different in execution. But Karen simply huffed that I should check my homeowner's manual and marched away to terrorize some other unfortunate neighbor. I spent the weekend photographing my door, collecting the approval documentation, and preparing for what I knew would be a protracted battle, all over a shade of blue that was, in fact, exactly what had been approved. The real trouble started about 2 months ago. I woke up one morning with a shooting pain in my lower right abdomen. As someone with a family history of kidney issues, I recognized the signs of a possible kidney stone. The pain was excruciating, and I could barely make it to the bathroom without doubling over. I called my doctor, who instructed me to go to the emergency room immediately if the pain was that severe. With trembling hands, I dialed 911. The dispatcher was efficient and reassuring, promising that an ambulance would arrive shortly. I managed to unlock my front door before collapsing on the couch, curled in agony. Between waves of pain, I heard the distant wail of sirens approaching our neighborhood. But then, strangely, they stopped. Minutes passed. The pain was becoming unbearable, and I was growing increasingly concerned about why help hadn't arrived. When my doorbell finally rang, I expected to see emergency medical technicians. Instead, through my security camera feed on my phone, I saw a very annoyed-looking paramedic, and Karen, standing in front of my house with her arms crossed. "Sir, we've been trying to reach your home for the past 15 minutes, the paramedic explained when I opened the door, his voice tight with professional restraint. "This lady has been blocking our vehicle at the neighborhood entrance, claiming we didn't have proper authorization to enter the community." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Through waves of pain, I looked past him to where Karen was standing on my lawn, clipboard in hand. "Ambulances and emergency vehicles need to be logged with the HOA office before entry," Karen announced, as if reciting from some twisted version of our community guidelines. It's for security purposes. You can't just come blazing through our peaceful neighborhood without proper notification. The paramedic looked like he was about to say something highly unprofessional, but his training kicked in. Sir, we need to get you to the hospital right away. Can you walk to the ambulance, or should we bring in a stretcher? Karen stepped forward, positioning herself between me and the medical professional. He can't leave until we sort this out. His landscaping service was here last Tuesday outside of approved hours, and we haven't processed the violation notice yet. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Through the haze of pain, I managed to pull out my phone and start recording. Karen, I said, my voice strained, these are emergency medical services. I need medical attention. Please step aside. It's Mrs. Wilkins to you, she corrected, her voice dripping with condescension. And as HOA president, I have a responsibility to ensure all community guidelines are followed, emergency or not. There's a proper procedure for everything. The second paramedic approached at this point, his patience clearly wearing thin. Ma'am, interfering with emergency medical services is a criminal offense. We are legally authorized to access any property when responding to a 911 call. Please step aside immediately. Karen's face flushed red. Do you know who I am? I've been president of this HOA for 7 years. Nothing happens in Oakwood Estates without my approval. What happened next is somewhat blurry in my memory, as the pain was reaching a crescendo. I remember the paramedics radioing for police assistance while helping me onto a stretcher. I remember Karen following alongside, still clutching her clipboard and spouting regulations about unauthorized medical transport from community property. And I vividly remember the police cruiser pulling up just as they were loading me into the ambulance. The officer assessed the situation quickly, listening to the paramedic's account and my labored explanation. Karen, apparently believing the police were there to support her position, launched into a detailed explanation of how I had violated 17 different HOA regulations in my 3 years of residency, including this unauthorized ambulance call. Ma'am, step away from the vehicle, the officer said with the calm authority that comes from dealing with irrational people on a daily basis. These medical professionals have been delayed in providing emergency care because of your interference. Do you understand that's a criminal offense? Karen's expression shifted from self-righteous indignation to confusion. I'm simply enforcing our community guidelines, she insisted, waving her clipboard for emphasis. All visitors, including emergency services, need to check in at the guardhouse. It's Rule 37.5 in our bylaws. The officer's patience was visibly evaporating. Ma'am, state law supersedes your HOA regulations. Interfering with emergency services is a Class A misdemeanor. Now step back so these paramedics can do their job, or I'll have to place you under arrest. That should have been the end of it. Any reasonable person would have backed down. But Karen, it seemed, had crossed some invisible line where her identity as HOA enforcer had completely overtaken her grasp on legal reality. She actually stepped in front of the ambulance as the driver attempted to pull away, planting herself in the path of the vehicle with her hand raised like some bizarre crossing guard. What followed was both surreal and, in retrospect, grimly satisfying. The officer calmly and professionally placed Karen under arrest, reciting her rights as she protested loudly about community standards, and how she would have everyone's job when this was sorted out. The last image I had before the ambulance doors closed was Karen being escorted to the police cruiser, her clipboard falling forgotten to the ground. My medical emergency turned out to be exactly what I'd feared, a sizable kidney stone that required immediate treatment. After 2 days in the hospital and a procedure to remove the stone, I returned home to discover that news of the incident had spread throughout our community like wildfire. My phone was filled with messages from neighbors expressing their shock, support, and, in many cases, sharing their own Karen stories. The legal consequences for Karen unfolded swiftly. She was formally charged with interfering with emergency medical services, a charge that carried potential jail time and significant fines. Her attorney negotiated a plea deal that included a $20,000 fine, 200 hours of community service, and a restraining order that prohibited her from coming within 100 feet of my property. But the community consequences were even more immediate. An emergency meeting of the HOA board was called, and in a unanimous decision, Karen was removed from her position as president and expelled from the board entirely. The meeting was apparently standing room only, with neighbors I'd never even spoken to showing up to ensure their votes were counted. The final blow came from Karen's employer. As a real estate agent specializing in exclusive communities, her arrest and the surrounding publicity were deemed detrimental to her firm's reputation. She was placed on unpaid leave pending an internal review. I heard through neighborhood gossip that when Karen was informed of all these consequences simultaneously during a meeting with her attorney, she stared in disbelief before spluttering, "But I was just following the rules. Don't they understand I was protecting our property values?" Her voice had risen to a shrill pitch that echoed through the attorney's office, loud enough for the receptionist to hear through the closed door. "This is my community, mine. They can't do this to me." And then, as the full weight of her new reality settled in, she collapsed back into her chair.